Hi guys, welcome to episode 1 of my YouTube podcast, True Crime Tuesdays. Be sure to like and subscribe as I have great ideas for the future. But for today, this episode is focused on the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Some more breaking news for you this morning. We're just hearing that a search is underway for a 3-year-old British girl who's gone missing in the Algarve area of Portugal, and she went missing last night.
Many of you will probably already know about this case due to the fact that it is such a high profile case and one of the most famous child abduction cases ever. I remember wondering about this case for years, as there's so many things that could have happened to her, but everyone can speculate. There's no right or wrong answer as of right now. So I'm going to tell you the facts and let you make your mind up for yourself. So first of all, some backstory of the case. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, were both born in 1968. Kate, whose maiden name was Kate Healy, was born in Houghton, which is near Liverpool. She grew up and graduated in 1992 with a degree in medicine from the University of Dundee. Jerry, aka Gerald Patrick McCann, was born in Glasgow and he also qualified in medicine and he got his MD in 2002. If you don't know what an MD is, it is a postgraduate qualification in medicine and it's higher than a bachelor, and everyone knows how big of a deal a bachelor degree is. Keep this information in mind as it could lead to your hypothesis by the end of this episode. Jerry and Kate met in 1993 in Glasgow and got married in 1998, which was just 5 years later. Kate struggled to get pregnant for 5 years, so in the end she turned to using IVF, which is how she managed to conceive Madeleine, who was born May 12th, 2003. Now, fast forward to her disappearance. The McCanns, with their now 3 children, Madeleine, aged 3, and her 2 younger siblings, Emily and Sean, who are twins, and some family friends went on holiday to the Prédeluge resort in the Algarve region of Portugal. On the night of May 3rd, 2007, the McCanns and their friends left the children in their apartments asleep at around 8:30 p.m. to go to a tapas bar 50 yards away, and at this time there was a quiz night going on. So it was absolutely full of holiday makers and people maybe looking for a good time. It's a holiday, what do you expect? So you went to the tapas bar, and like I said, it was 50 yards away. To put that into perspective, it's about 5.5 times bigger than a London bus, or 2.3867 times the length of a bowling lane, which if you think about it, that isn't a very big distance at all. So all the adults took turns in checking in on the children in the apartments around every 20 minutes to half an hour. They had this thing where they left the patio door unlocked as a way to get in and out of the apartments discreetly. As they were checking, they closed the windows, they put the shutters down in the ground floor bedroom, which was where Madeleine and the twins were staying. All the adults, like I said, took turns, and Jerry was the first on the rounds. He left to check the kids at around 9:05, and he notices the position of the door is different how they left it, but all 3 children are still there and still asleep. On his way back to the tapas bar, it said he stopped to have a conversation with someone along the way, which is, if you think about it, it's probably normal. It's a holiday resort, people are just looking to have fun, honestly. I don't think that's anything to be particularly concerned about. So Jerry returned to the tapas bar, and a family friend was the next to check on the children, and she claimed to see a man carrying a child. This originally was the main suspect, but was disregarded 6 years later as an innocent British holidaymaker carrying his daughter home. But aside from that, there was no issues whatsoever. This was at 9:15 p.m,
At 9:30 p.m, another friend offers to check up on Madeleine and the twins, as he's going to check on his own kids anyway. His apartment was directly next to the McCann's apartment, and when he returns, he says everything is fine and quiet, and there is no issues whatsoever. After this, at 10 p.m, Kate McCann finished eating and goes to her apartment, but quickly notices that the children's bedroom door is quite open and goes to shut it until a breeze slams the door shut. She enters the room and realises Madeleine is missing, alongside the fact that the window was open and the shutters are up. She remembers distinctively that they both closed the window and pulled down the shutters in the children's bedroom before they left.
Kate then proceeds to run back to the bar, shouting something along the lines of "they've taken her," and this instantly implies kidnapping. And many people at the Prayer Deluge helped look for Madeleine, but were obviously unsuccessful. Sometime during all the chaos, the police were called, and everyone searches till the morning of May 4th. A mental note I made while researching all this is that when Kate realised Madeleine wasn't there, she left her 2 young twins in the apartment while running to alert the others. Why would someone leave your young kids in an apartment if you'd assumed your oldest child had been abducted or kidnapped? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, what if the person who did it's still in the apartment? What if they were trying to make their escape? Kate came in and they had to hide, and she's just gone and left her 2 youngest kids in the apartment. That's something that stood out to me while I was researching all of this, and it does not make sense to me one little bit. Not one bit. Some other side notes I made about this case was that around the time, or just after Jerry did like the first set of rounds, a couple walking past claimed to see a man carrying a small blonde child in pink pyjamas, which later matched Madeleine's description. But because nobody knew she was missing at this point, they thought nothing of it. I mean, like, come on, it's a holiday resort. Like, kids go to bed at all hours of the night and parents have to carry them back to the apartments, so I don't blame the couple for not reporting it, because this does not seem the least bit concerning at the time. Another thing is border control wasn't called or alerted until 10 a.m. the next morning, which was May 4th. And this also was 12 hours after Kate McCann realised her daughter was gone. Like, if you don't know, the first few hours in an investigation are crucial, especially when a child as young as Madeleine is involved, because this is the best chance of finding her. And like, the fact that they wasted that crucial few hour period that they could have been looking for her and had border control alerted, and everyone in the surrounding area, like all the police, all the like emergency rescue people, if all them people had been alerted the minute that Madeleine went missing, she could have been found years ago. But that didn't happen, and here we are, 14, 15, 16 years later, she's still missing and no one has no idea where she is. The third point I noticed was that Kate automatically assumed her daughter was kidnapped. No other explanation, just kidnapping. This links back to my other point of why then leave your youngest kids in the apartment alone. Like, again, it just doesn't make any sense. At the time of Madeleine's disappearance, there was no CCTV in the Prayer Deluge resort. I know this is 2007 and it wasn't great back then, but any evidence at all may have prevented this entire thing. And again, Madeleine may have been found years ago. Whether dead or alive, she would have been found. Some eyewitnesses have also claimed that they saw a man hovering around the McCann's apartment around 4 p.m. This may just be a coincidence and he may have just been waiting for someone, but I thought I'd include it anyway, as it is a bit strange. Like, he may have had something to do with it. I'm not saying he did and I'm not saying he hasn't, but there is always that risk of they might have had something to do with it. A few days after the incident, the police brought dogs into the apartment, names of Eddie and Kayla, and during the original investigation of the apartment, both dogs gave their individual signals behind the sofa in the apartment and near the wardrobe in the bedroom. In the second search for these dogs, they were looking at the apartment that McCann's had been living in since her disappearance. The only thing that was signalled was Madeleine's, cuddle cat is what they called it, and it was a toy. So they moved it and laid everything in the room out in a new place, and Eddie alerted the stuffed animal again, and to a box of clothing. The third search was the search of the rental car the McCanns had after Madeleine disappeared, and Eddie gave an alert by the driver's door. Kayla alerted to the boot of the car, or depending where you're from, you could say trunk of the car, and the glove compartment, which contained maps and the keys to the car. The keys were said to be placed in a bucket of sand, and Kayla alerted it again. The bucket with the keys in was then moved to another side of the car park, or like I said, if you're from, say, America, you'd say parking lot, and she alerted beside it yet again. So, what does this mean? Well, the fact both dogs signalled so many times and the evidence was discounted or disregarded seems highly unreasonable. Some may speculate Madeleine died in that apartment, but this is blown straight out of the water, as if it was a third party, how would the dogs have found traces in the new apartment in the car that the McCanns rented nearly a month after she disappeared? Another thing I probably need to mention is that Eddie detects a smell a body gives off after death and blood, and has worked with the FBI and helped in over 200 homicide cases. Kayla, on the other hand, only detects human blood.
The second dog that we've seen work today is the crime scene dog, Kayla. She will only indicate to me when she's found human blood.
And helped in investigations all over the UK. Both are known to be very experienced and reliable. The fact both dogs alerted is a huge indication that there was something else going on, since if Madeleine was just abducted in her sleep, there'd be no detection whatsoever. But they alerted in both the apartment she went missing from, the McCann's new apartment where she never stayed, and the McCann's rental car. Something just doesn't seem right about this to me. Plus, the rental car, she was never in either. However, they still alerted in there. The suspects list has recently been reduced, but the original people on that list is still worth a mention in my opinion, so we can see exactly what the police's thought process was during these sets of investigations. Number 1. Jerry and Kate McCann themselves. There's a substantial amount of evidence against the two, and the majority of people, after hearing about this case, believe it was them, myself included. But during these episodes, I'm acting as an unbiased source of information. But here's what we do know about the pair. The sniffer dogs that were brought in to look for potential blood or anything that could help the police alerted to some items of clothing owned by Kate McCann. And even worse, she refused to answer 48 questions about her daughter's disappearance, such as these 5 questions here. When the sniffer dog also marked human blood behind the sofa, did you say you couldn't explain any more than you already had? She said nothing. When the sniffer dog marked the scent of a corpse coming from the vehicle you hired a month after the disappearance, did you say you couldn't explain any more than you already had? Nothing. When human blood was marked in the boot of the vehicle, did you say you couldn't explain it any more than you already had? She stayed silent. When confronted with the results of Maddie's DNA, carried out in a British lab collected from behind the sofa and the boot of the vehicle, did you say you couldn't explain any more than you already had? Again, nothing. And finally, did you have any responsibility or intervention in your daughter's disappearance? Right there is a huge red flag when she refused to answer a question about her involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. If you think about it, any mother genuinely worried about her child would be as cooperative as possible. And the fact that she wasn't, it just does not sit right with me whatsoever. The second person on my list for who could be involved in Madeleine's disappearance was a guy named Raymond Hewlett, who was a convicted paedophile living around an hour away from the Praia da Luz resort. You can understand why the police would come to the conclusion that he could be a potential suspect due to his conviction. So they interviewed him and nothing really came of it. The third person of interest on the original list was Euclides Monteiro, and I'm really sorry if I said that wrong, but I genuinely do not know how to pronounce it. And he was a burglar and a heroin addict that was seen in the area on May 3rd, which was the day of Madeleine's disappearance. And because of his criminal activity, that's probably why the police brought him in, due to his background, which is understandable. And finally, the last person on the original list is an anonymous person. We don't really know who he is, we don't have much information about him. But there was a person carrying a small child matching Madeleine's description around 10 p.m. and about 500 yards away from the apartment. However, recently the police think they found the person responsible. His name's Christian Brueckner and he's a convicted paedophile, and in June of last year he was accused of kidnapping and murdering Madeleine McCann. New evidence has arose saying he worked as a handyman at the Ocean Club at the Pré de Luge in the spring of 2007, which is when the McCanns were on holiday, as May is in spring. Police first raided his home in 2020 and found a child's toy bucket buried in the back garden, but accusations and the police first identify him as a potential suspect dates all the way back to 2017. When it came out he was living in an RV when she disappeared, and phone records timed to the Pré de Luge area. And if you don't know, police phone tracking is very, very good these days, which is probably why the evidence only recently arose. Even though all these people may have been a suspect at one point in time, many theories have arose about this case, since it is known as a cold case. However, I have managed to whittle it down to 6 main theories. So the first theory is the sex trafficking theory.
This theory explains that Madeleine may have been abducted for sex trafficking, which is a possibility, as there was 9 assaults and 3 near misses between 2004 and 2007 in the Pré de Luge area.
The second theory is the parent selling theory. Some believe her parents, Kate and Jerry, organised the whole abduction for money and fame and everything that came with all the publicity they have received and what they are still receiving to this very day. The third theory is the parent drugging theory. This theory involves that the parents may have drugged her and her siblings, and maybe even some of the family's friends' kids, to have a nice quiet night out with no issues, and that went horribly wrong and she actually overdosed and died that way. This theory would make sense, as both her parents were doctors and they'd both have access to all types of anesthesia and other medicines, and this theory stands out to me the most. But again, I am an unbiased source of information and my opinion shouldn't jurisdict yours, so I'm going to keep my opinions to myself and just give you all the information you need to make your own. The fourth theory is a couple's theory, which involves her being stolen by criminals on behalf of a wealthy childless couple, and some witnesses claim to have seen suspicious people hanging around the resort both days before and the day of Madeleine's disappearance. The fifth theory is the discovery theory, which involves her being found alive, but her case has become such a high profile case that the lie that she was still missing had to be upheld for her to live as happy as she can in a normal life. The sixth theory is the wandering theory, and this involves her walking out of the apartment by free will and she was killed in some form of accident. This could be a possibility, as the number one cause of death among children aged 1 to 4 is drowning, followed closely by 2, some form of car accident, and this could be explained as the apartment was situated next to a road. After all this took place, the years following this both dragged and sort of peaked in terms of evidence. Sometimes there was very little evidence at all for years, and other times there was a lot of evidence that they thought, oh my god, we're actually gonna solve this case. So the timeline after May 4th went something like this. On May 14th, 2007, detectives take Anglo-Portuguese property developer Robert Murat in for questioning and made him a formal suspect, and then proceeded to search the home he and his mother lived in, which was around 100 yards away from the apartment the McCanns were staying in. On August 11th, investigators publicly announced that Madeleine could be dead. They publicly announced that there is a chance she could have died already, but they still keep up the hope that she is alive. On September 7th, 2007, Kate and Jerry were both made suspects officially by Portuguese police and investigators. On July 21st, 2008, the McCanns were cleared by Portuguese investigators who claimed they'd exhausted all possibilities that the parents could be involved. On May 10th, 2011, Kate releases a book about her daughter, which was released on Madeleine's 8th birthday. In 2011, Scotland Yard launched its own investigation or review, which was known formally as Operation Grange. On April 25th, 2011, Scotland Yard detectives believes Madeleine is still alive and releases the age progression image, which is going to be inserted here, as a 9-year-old child. They also called Portuguese authorities to reopen the case, but they say they haven't found any new material or evidence to reopen the case. However, on July 4th, 2013, Scotland Yard was said to have uncovered new lines of inquiry, and they identified 38 people of interest. On October 24th, 2013, the Portuguese police reopened their case after this new information came out. On January 29th, 2014, British detectives fly to Portugal and they claim it's to make some arrests. On June 3rd, 2014, sniffer dogs were brought in again to search an area of scrubland close to where Madeleine went missing. On December 12th, 2014, police began questioning 11 people who were thought to have information that could be very useful to them in closing their case. On September 16th, 2015, the UK government goes public about how much the investigation cost, and this was said to be more than £10 million. On October 28th, 2015, Operation Grange was reduced from 29 detectives to only 4, which was a major cutback in terms of progress. Sometime between 2015 and 2016, the police hunted a person of significance after a development in the case, and an inside source claimed that the person is a critical line of inquiry in the £12 million investigation. Informer Met Police Chief arranged a new interview with both of the McCanns in what they referred to as the Tapas 7. On April 30th, 2017, Kate and Jerry prepare for the 10-year anniversary of their daughter's disappearance with a BBC interview where they said whatever it takes for as long as it takes, in referring to finding Madeleine. On May 3rd, 2019, local media reported Portuguese detectives investigating a foreign paedophile as a suspect in the abduction of Madeleine McCann. On June 3rd, 2020, police revealed that a 43-year-old German prisoner has been identified as a suspect in the Madeleine McCann case officially. This man is now known as Christian Brueckner, who in 2020 had a drug conviction and was living in the Algarve at the time Madeleine went missing in 2007. He was said to have been stealing from people's houses and drug dealing to fund his new life in Portugal. Brueckner was also known to have child abuse offences, and police speculate he was trying to burgle from the McCanns and abducted Madeleine in the process. A prosecutor in the German police department or federal department also claimed that the evidence the German police have is strong enough to assume the girl is dead, and added that his private opinion is that he, referring to Brueckner, relatively quickly killed the girl, possibly abused her, then killed her. Christian Hopp, who worked for Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office, said that, unfortunately, our investigation leads us to believe that she was killed. Even though the case is not closed yet, but has been revealed it may be closed by the end of 2022, some reports claim Brueckner confessed to a friend after seeing some TV coverage about Madeleine in 2017. A former colleague also allegedly revealed that Brueckner totally lost it during a conversation about Madeleine and her case, saying that he wanted them to stop discussing it, and he allegedly shouted, "The child is dead and that's it." However, none of these have been confirmed by any police force, and what initially led to them suspecting Brueckner is still unknown. That's all the evidence I have for today's episode. I'd absolutely love to hear your opinions in the comments. Just keep it respectful, because I don't want to upset anyone or offend anyone. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about recognition for someone who deserves justice. That's really what this whole thing's about. Like, the victims and everything, true crime, and how harsh the world is. So, leaving at that, that is the end of today's episode of True Crime Tuesdays. I really hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to drop a like and a follow, as it helps me out a lot. Keep Madeleine in your prayers, and maybe one day this case will finally be solved and that little girl will get the justice she deserves. See you all next week for another episode of True Crime Tuesdays.